Hey, here we are. We are at our last Think and Link of the year. We have two amazing guests, Sue and Susan. We're going to be talking sustainable living and materials and all kinds of other wonderful things and entrepreneurship and um, the this being our last, there'll probably be some holiday discussions and about what people are getting as gifts. Who knows what? But I want to make sure you're all set up and ready to go for what's going to happen today. We're going to be talking about, or talking with these two guests, and but a little bit of background on Capsule and why we do this. We do these Think and Link sessions as our way of giving back to our global community. We are all seeking new opportunities, friendships, professions, and we're a curious crew here at Capsule, so we're always looking to learn from our significant network of thinkers and doers. This is our bi-monthly event. Now, this is our last of this year, but we are going to be moving to a once a month, I believe. Hate to announce that now, but once a month in January. We already have our guests lined up, though not published yet, for January of 2022. And it will be marvelous. And Capsule is a special projects team here in Minneapolis. We do work for brands like Patagonia, Arc'teryx, Osprey, PepsiCo, and a variety of others. So if you want to know more about that, feel free to reach out. But hopefully people will be putting some pieces into chat, into the conversation. I look forward to answering questions as we go. But I'm going to pass it over to Kelly to introduce our guests and for the first question.
Wonderful. Thank you, Aaron. And Susan, so excited to have you here with us today. We have a lot we want to cover. We're going to try and do that in the 60 minutes we have here today, but I will not do justice in terms of introducing you. So I'm going to actually turn it over to both of you to do a quick background, who you are, your journey, what brought you here today, and then we'll jump right into the discussion. So I'm going to start, Sue, if you could please just give us a little background, history of all the things that you've done to date.
Oh my goodness, that's a curveball. Let me see if I can try to keep it somewhat high level. So I have an eclectic career. I think curiosity is probably the common theme. I've been involved in sport, in women's sport, in sustainability. I think, again, a common theme is sort of being at the beginning of something that then becomes a megatrend, not having anything to do with me, maybe just being in the right place at the right time. So worked on women's sports as a journalist and at Nike in the 1990s, which was, the early days of, U.S. women's soccer, WNBA. Did some of the work actually that I'm most proud of in my career, and went from there to launching Lucy, which was the first women's only activewear brand, again, a category that then took off with brands like Athleta and Lululemon and Nike Women. Lucy was .com 1.0, and we survived the .com crash and successfully transitioned to brick and mortar retail. I got the entrepreneurial bug at that time. And after a brief, what I call my midlife crisis, when I worked in nonprofit management for about 5 years, I came back to entrepreneurial work, this time working for a sustainable materials company called Bolt Threads. Our vision is way better materials for a way better world. We are really trying to use biology to create materials for consumer products that enable us to sustain a standard of living for a planet heading towards, 8 billion people. That's me.
Amazing. Sue, thank you
Love
for
it.
sharing. I know, right? Susan, impressive background of yours as well. Can you please share a little bit?
Well, first, I'm just so excited to be on the panel with Sue. I was mesmerized by listening to what you're talking about. And very likewise, I found my career just, part of it is being in the right place at the right time with society and change. So I think the first 10 years I was in consumer packaged goods at that time in the late 80s, early 90s. It was a great way to learn how to run a business. You're at the hub of the wheel. You have to understand all aspects, from R&D to getting claims approved by the ADA or whoever you're working with, all the way to understanding advertising and customer sets and retail. And then from there, I was really fortunate in 1995 to join Microsoft. And at that time, nobody really knew who Microsoft was. Bill Gates hadn't been on a cover, and we all didn't have these laptops, and we all weren't connected. And so I think those years were just some of the best years of my life. Those 10 years, I had an opportunity to work on digital imaging, which didn't exist at that time. There weren't digital cameras and cool filters and all the other things. But then I found myself being really drawn to other really important work. I worked in EMEA as the chief of staff across the 78 countries, worked with the World Economic Forum, and then came back and really had a passion around child safety on the internet and did some of those things. And then after that, I had done a lot of startups within Microsoft, even though everybody's like, oh, but Microsoft was big. Like Sue, I really just gravitate to innovation. So I was lucky to join some other companies like Rover as their first CMO. They just recently SPAC'd, right? They match. It's a marketplace where you match dog lovers to sitters, and based on all these criteria that you can select from. And then I did some consulting, and then I was just so fortunate to find Footprint. And the reason is just this great blending of taking technology and really making a difference in the world where we have all these issues of climate change, et cetera. And we just had some big news this week around having the funding to be able to really expand and have an opportunity to meet all of these customer needs around our plant-based solutions. So I just love this, the time that I'm in my career. And it's funny at this age to be finding not only the chance to use all your past skills, but to again be on the forefront of change. And I guess I've got to get the quick thing in there about the Footprint Center. So like Sue, I had a chance, actually in the reverse of my order of my career. She started there, and now I'm winding around to her, which is, having led the Footprint Center, naming rights and strategic partnership. It gives us a great opportunity to support WNBA, the Phoenix Mercury, who made it to the finals this year and were gallant and incredible, right? And the Chicago Sky did a great job, and they closed it out. And also in the NBA with Phoenix Suns, we're off to a great start this year, but last year we were in the finals also. So that opportunity is not a naming rights deal. It's all about engaging fans on this journey to become a plastic-free venue, and their role in transforming, their choices and understanding the power that they have at their hands.
Wow, so impressive. You're both such forward-thinking, progressive, just thought leaders in your space. So thank you. Again, we're just excited to have you on the stage with us today, the virtual stage, and have a lot of ground we want to cover. So I'm going to jump right in, Sue and Susan, and you both touched on this. We talk about your history, the organizations you've worked for and currently work for now, and lead from a marketing and brand design perspective. You're both working for organizations that are driven by a mission to do better, be better, sustainability, more responsible practices, specifically in that environmental impact, sustainability sectors. I'm curious how, through marketing, your roles as CMOs for these organizations, how do you articulate, or how have you found that, or that what resonates with your key stakeholders, consumers, customers, with regard to human-centered design and brand and articulating purpose? Can you touch a little bit on perhaps some of the storytelling that you've seen, again, resonates? Sue, let's start with you, and then Susan, would love your thoughts.
Sure. So Bold Threads is at first and foremost always a deep science, deep technology company. And so that puts me as a brand marketer in an interesting position. My colleagues, no matter how much they love me, are always going to be a little suspicious of marketing. It's incredibly important that everything I do in a way that is authentic and informed. And so the first and most important aspect of our brand always has to be credibility. The most important stakeholders are the scientists. If I ever say something wrong, either in its biology, chemistry, or physics, I lose credibility with my core team. And yet I need to make our technology accessible and not scary to the average consumer who, we know wants these concepts presented at somewhere between a 6th and 8th grade level. And so and it's certainly not just me, it's me and my team have landed, is really around transparency is our friend. Because if we can commit to being entirely honest about everything we're doing, whether that's genetically modified organisms or greenhouse gas emissions, then I get credibility from the team. I'm never stretching. I'm never fudging. And then the second piece in terms of the accessibility is, how do we make it kind of fun? And so the metaphor that we came up with, I'm probably going to surprise you a little with this, but the executive team on an offsite one time went out and watched the movie Jumanji. And in the movie Jumanji, right? You didn't see that coming. I know you didn't.
Yeah, no, did not.
So there's a character named Martha, right? And she's the nerd. And she wears glasses and she has her hair pulled back. And then at the end of the movie, boom, she pulls off the glasses, and lets her hair down, and she's beautiful. I strive for our brand to be the nerd in glasses. We're the nerdy friend, but the one who gets invited to parties so that we have an opportunity to educate people. So we can hang around with someone like Stella McCartney, and she turns to us and to Dan, and when she gets a hard science question, and says, "Meet my friend Dan." Right? So he's cool enough to hang out with Stella, but he's also authentic and credible in the way he talks about science.
Wow, love that. Yeah,
I love that.
Yes, I
Great.
love that parallel example.
Yeah, that's great.
It's about building trust internally and externally, right? Incredibility. Yes, Sue,
100%.
thank you. Love that perspective. Susan.
Yeah, I'm going to start with a movie analogy too. So we're an engineering company, right? Everything we do is around material science, where we have to design, develop, and manufacture, because nobody else in the world has figured out how to do this with paper, with paper fibers. And so being true and transparent, I agree with everything that Sue said. Credibility for us is not only internally, just like Sue, it's externally with your customers, it's with your ambassadors, it's with Wall Street, it's with everything, right? But the movie that I want to talk about is, we think of ourselves as Iron Man, but Iron Man couldn't beat Thanos without his whole ecosystem of Avengers. And so what we do while we're the engineering geeks figuring out, right, how to create plant-based fiber, right, that can have food in it, go into a freezer for 14 months, come out and go to an oven or a microwave, right? There's a lot of science, a lot of patents around that. We can't be successful in transforming the earth, right, to be healthier, creating a healthier planet without all these other Avengers, right? So I think Thanos is kind of like people using plastics, people producing the plastic. It's not good for the environment. It's around for hundreds of years, goes to landfill, et cetera, and there's health issues. So we have to work with our customers, right, our B2B customers, to want to transform and take the risk. And then the ones that have been rewarded, because the consumers and the storytelling, they understand this, especially millennials, et cetera. They don't want to put plastic in a microwave. They don't want it close to their food. And so, but there's a lot of other ecosystem, Avengers in there helping us. There's the NGOs that have been educating for years on what's going on to, our oceans, that there'll be by 2050 more plastic in the ocean by weight than fish, right? There's other science Avengers like Dr. Shauna Swan, who just wrote the book Countdown, that talks about, testosterone, basically the low levels as a result of these chemicals in the system. There's people like Dr. Leonardo Trisande, who wrote Fatter, Sicker, Poorer, and what's happening with these chemicals in the endocrine system disorders, et cetera, that we're seeing. So there's an incredible amount of people around us, and by working together, we actually can do better storytelling and support our customers to have success, so that these B2C companies, when they make the transition, consumers understand it, and they're like going to the stores and buying that over other products that are not healthy for the environment or themselves.
Wow, that's great. Multi-layered. You're right. There's some complexities that come with. Yes. Thank you both.
Yeah, this is, I love this discussion. So this is obviously, we're in the world of packaging design, so it comes up a lot, and we're always having conversations about materials. And in product design and packaging design, if you're not talking about materials, you're not even in the conversation. And I grew up as parents of, or a son of environmentalists, and so that literally lived in a dome and were hippies and did all kinds of wonderful things during that time period. But as I grew up and realized, I mean, there's so many pieces of friction, right? You get these things where people bring up that, well, just turn off the light switch, right? Like, okay, there's a technological solution for that we've developed now that can solve that, versus relying upon kids to tell you to turn off the light switch, because of course adults, we don't remember. And so I'm just curious about points of friction that you've seen in your life and in your specific roles now, where as you run into the everyday consumer getting it. Is it cognitive friction? Is it behavioral friction? What are the things that you're seeing? Sue, do you want to start with that?
Sure, but before I get into friction, I would just like to segue off what you were just saying to a point of joy, which is last night I received a shipment of unicorn meat. If you guys don't know what unicorn meat is, I would suggest that you look it up. It might not be for sale in your market yet, but it's a new startup plant-based meat that is awesome. And the woman founder CEO sent me a shipment, but it came packaged in dry ice and entirely recyclable, compostable packaging. And that was awesome. I was like,
wow,
so excited about that. So yeah, Susan's shaking her head, so she'll tell you the name of the company. I think it was something like
Radiant Farms.
ThermaPax. I can't remember. I'm really bad at names, which I shouldn't be because I'm in branding, but I am. Maybe Susan knows. I'll look it up. But hey, like I see friction, and I also see forward progress. And I want to double click on what Susan said, like the inherent discomfort with and skepticism about plastic is only growing. And people's awareness of plastic as an issue is driving brands to make some really, really great changes. Some visible, some not visible, in terms of thinning of plastic bottles and using different materials. But I do have a lot of reason for hope on that one. In terms of friction, the one thing that we have to accept is that most consumers are not going to sacrifice quality for sustainability. So the product has to be just as good. If we're going to make a non-animal leather, it has to look and feel like leather. And I don't think that they should. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It just means that alternatives have to hit parity, right?
Yeah.
Second is on the brand side. One of the biggest points of friction I see is persistent greenwashing. It does a lot of things. It makes people confused. It makes people cynical. It delays the inevitable reckoning because people think I can just buy this shirt that has a green check on it from a fast fashion outlet and I'm good. You can keep buying stuff and feel great about it, right? Or that's one consumer, and then the other consumer is just, I don't trust anything. We hear this a lot in our focus groups. I don't trust anything brands say, and I don't believe your material is, just because you say your material is sustainable, I don't believe it. And then the third thing is probably the biggest thing, which is sustainability is really complicated. And you know how people say perfect is the enemy of the good. I sometimes feel like in sustainability, everything is the enemy of everything else. It is just really, really hard to life cycle analysis, for example, life cycle assessment. It's supposed to be a tool, but it's a really imperfect, highly manipulatable, and really difficult to understand science. And so at a certain point, I think there's going to have to be regulatory pressure and investment pressure to force the scientists and the engineers to figure it out and make solutions that actually are better and that can find their way into the consumer marketplace at parity, right?
Yep.
Materials that have been developed for centuries. Like, how long have we been doing plastics chemistry? It's like 100 years. You've got to engineer solutions in the next 10, or we're in worse trouble than we already are.
Yeah, that is a really good point. The complexity of it, and I mean that's hard to distill down into consumer messaging, right? To try to get down and help people understand it, because and then the progress, or the perfection is the enemy of just moving along on a progressive scale to get better.
Not just perfection, better. Better.
Right.
Something is better on one scale and not better on another.
Yeah.
Right? constant series of trade-offs. It's a really complicated ecosystem.
Yeah. Yeah, very good points.
Yeah,
Susan.
I mean, I love everything Sue said. Let me just kind of re-echo it with different storytelling, which is the way that we think about it always with ourselves and with our customers is we're on a journey, right? It can't all change overnight. We're shipping over 700 million units right now. Even next year with shipping billions of units is still not enough to meet all the demand that's out there. Like just a cup would, I don't even know if I have one of my cups here. Yeah, I do. So most cups, or all cups, have a plastic liner, just to give you an example.
Yep.
So that's why there's usually a seam in it. So for us, this is the first ever produced plastic-free cup that actually composts and is recyclable. But finding the way to communicate it and storytell around it, but then not have 10 billion of them ready to ship, that would be just for one vendor or one quick service restaurant, to give you an example, right? So there is this complication of how do you announce the innovation? How do you get the innovators on board? Sue was kind of talking about different segments of consumers that understand it and they'll quickly adopt, and then you move forward. So the friction for us is a little bit about what Sue talked about. Greenwashing is huge. It's prevalent. We as a society have been convinced by people who were paying to convince us that all you do is you put plastic in the blue recycle bin and it magically disappears. And this is not the case. Less than 9% gets recycled. And yet think about where people are in their lives right now. We're still dealing with COVID, the loss, the incredible upheaval in the economy, their jobs. How do you school your children when they've been at home? So we have to be really cognizant of, they don't know how to understand what's greenwashing and what's not greenwashing. So as marketers, we have to really understand where are people. Like right now, I'm not talking about the human health issues that relate to plastic. Why? It's not the right time. What people have learned from COVID is there are things that are invisible that can kill you. I think we all learned that.
Yeah.
And it's just not the right time yet for me to go out and immediately correlate that to, hey, plastic is the new coal. Like that, there's scientific articles written on this. There's scientific articles talking about, the human health issues. But finding the right time and building the right momentum in that ecosystem and with consumers that understand it and bringing them along that journey is critical. That's what will overcome the friction. Right. And so, and the louder that you shout at an early stage, we're still at a fairly early stage. I don't have the wherewithal of budgets that these other companies, who have convinced the population that there aren't any issues. That's a tough battle to fight. And again, what I really get excited about is when we have opportunities like this. We have opportunities where we're recognized. We were just recognized this week by Newsweek for the top 50 disruptors for planet health, like our two our co-founders, Troy Swope and Yoke Chong. And so that's exciting to me. Having Lazarus Sports issue their first ever awards around using sport for social good. I mean, that's what motivates me day in, day out to take on all these challenges. But it's leaning in with the people that get it, and help. Like together we can find a way to communicate it.
Yeah, that is so good. Yeah,
I
love that you're using.
Yeah, what was that, Aaron?
I was gonna say, I love that you're using sports. I mean, that is as a platform, as a place. It's where there's a lot of engagement.
Yeah.
Where it's maybe unexpected. It's really interesting.
Anyway, I think the greatest compliment as a marketer, not for me, but just for our company that we received, was during that Lazarus Sport Award. It was the woman, June Shelton, I believe is her name. And she is the woman that led the whole Dove Self-Esteem Project, which as a woman, I was like so impressed with that, because it really transformed how teen girls can think about themselves, their body, their uniqueness. And, rather than trying to hold this, unrealistic bar of being a model in such a day and age where there's filters and all this other stuff. But she did this great work, and she was kind of applauding the teams like Footprint through that award that are willing to take on such an educational mission that's so critical in this case to every age, every gender, everyone in the world. And I think that's what really inspires us to find ways to overcome the friction.
That's
Love
great.
that. That's great.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I could talk about that all day. Sports and entertainment, how we can use those platforms to educate
Yeah.
consumers for sure. I do want to take a quick pivot. You've both touched on this with regard to innovation, which clearly is an integral part of your businesses. And you know, Susan was just reading the article, the Newsweek article about Troy and Yoke, and obviously they were listed among other incredible pioneers and innovators in the space. Would love to hear from both of you how you, number one, define innovation, and then talk a little bit about how important innovation is within your organization. Is it a systematic activity? Right? And then how do you engage internal stakeholders in that innovation process? So 3 questions baked into that, but let's start with your definition of, and Sue, let's start with you, and then talk about the role it plays within your organization.
So I laughed when I saw this question because I think that our company innovation is literally in our DNA almost to a fault. I'd say we often carry it too far. For the first few years of the company, even what I mean by carrying it too far, but which I actually think ends up being a net positive. Our founding team are curious scientists, and they're very skeptical of doing things the way things have always been done. So my definition of innovation is not doing things the way things have always been done. But that can extend to everything, like snacks in the lunchroom. No, we're not going to get the snacks from the traditional snack vendor that everybody uses. We're going to innovate and create a new snack system. With marketing, our founders have really challenged me. And in fact, our company is a really interesting blend of experienced executives and, young, mostly scientists, experienced executives who roll in saying, look, I've been doing it this way and I know how to do it, do not succeed in our organization. You have to be open to rethinking everything, and you have to be able to make an argument for why, if you're going to do the thing the traditional way, that it makes sense to do. And so that's forced me to think differently about a lot of things in branding and marketing, and how I'm building my team, and how I'm using agencies, and how I'm using freelancers. Just kind of doing things pro forma because it's the way you've always done it does not fly. Scientists like to pick it up, tinker it with it, and figure out if there's a different way to do it. I think now, as we've been around for 7-8 years, I think we're starting to understand that you don't need to reinvent every wheel. And so there's this really nice blend between when does kind of domain expertise help you move forward more quickly, and when is it worth checking your assumptions and rethinking. And the last piece of it that I'll just say is when you do subject everything to that innovation filter. If I can't explain why I think it is important for us to maintain, a really vibrant presence on Instagram, for example, if I can't explain that, if I can't defend that decision, then, I'm never going to survive at this company, but I'm probably not the right person for the job. So I've really grown to embrace that kind of relentless curiosity, and need to try to do things differently.
Love that. Yeah. And not innovate for the sake of innovation or innovating. To your point, it's like, yeah.
That's a really good point, Kelly, and that's been a hard lesson that we've had to learn sometimes. Sometimes we're a year down the road with trying to do something ourselves. I can remember a couple of pointed examples, which I can't share due to IP reasons, and it's like, there's a machine that does that. But, when you get engineers like building things and get blacksmiths and forges, and it's just like, sometimes that's moved us forward, and sometimes that's just delayed us from finding a resource that exists in the world that can already do that.
Right. See, thank you. Great thoughts. Susan.
Yeah. So for Footprint, I mean, innovation, like Sue, is critical in our DNA. It's one of our 6 DNA characteristics that we talk about. And, we were founded by 2 Intel engineers. So everything, the far majority of the company are engineers, and it's all about innovating with brand new elements like material science, right? How to figure out how they can work together to meet the key KPIs for each customer. So it's in everything we do every day. And the good thing for me is I love innovation. I love every day thinking about who are the other customers that we should be bringing into the fold? Who are the other innovators that we should be doing strategic partnerships with? What will society look like in 5 years, 10 years? Like if we totally transform the grocery store and eliminate plastic, what is the next place in our lives that we can be doing that? And so you really have to, as a CMO, you have to think about innovation well beyond what your landscape is today, because that helps establish this foundation of knowledge that consumers are having and what they're seeing. So like right now, think about a basketball game. Would you ever imagine having a sustainable fashion show during a halftime? Probably not, right? People don't think like that. But yet that is where society is today, right? We can pull things like that off and bring into a stadium that idea of upcycling or reusing, or here's the different, brands that are doing it well, right? And so I think if you're truly an innovator and you're a disruptor, the other people that are being disruptive, and you look for those tentacles in which you can transform a whole nother ecosystem, right? I don't think only about grocery stores. I think well beyond that, stadiums, universities, healthcare. Innovation on this topic will be everywhere. So yeah, I mean, I think just having so many people here, including our co-founders from Intel, innovation and engineering, and the fact that no one else is doing this in the world, we have to be, thinking like that every day. So
Right.
It makes it really fun.
That's great. So it is, in fact, maybe systematic. It's just part of who you are. It's
Absolutely
ingrained
the
in
way that we use all the kind of design protocols, the
Right.
way that we test, the way we innovate, the way we analyze when we're having issues. We call this one thing is called an OSER. It's what the objective, what's the status, OSER, what's the issue, what's the resolution, right? So there's different processes that are proven in like some of the largest companies in the world when they're engineering based. And so we use that, but then we have our own culture on top of that allows us to go even faster.
That's great. Love it. Thanks, Susan. Thanks for sharing that. That's
yeah, that is great.
Interesting to see.
Yeah.
The future.
So if we're gonna talk innovation, we have to talk design, because it's almost like peanut butter and jelly. The two go together really nicely, and you both have intersected with the design world in different ways. And so I'd love to hear your perspective on the value of design to your organizations. And because, I mean, you look at both of them and you could say you're behind the scenes and materials and not very visible, and design might not be important. And, there was a time before design became a thing when, people were like, well, it's B2B. We're not really into design as much. We don't need to worry about that stuff, right? Now it's pretty much everywhere, and everybody has to think about it. So I'm curious, Sue, that the organization, as I look at you and I look at what Bolt Threads looks like, and it's just amazing how much you use design in what is a house of engineers and scientists. It doesn't seem like that would be the case, but you do. So talk to me about that and the value of design to the organization.
Well, I thank you for noticing. You basically just described, why I exist within this company. So when I first crossed paths with the founders and they asked me to join the company was called Refactored Materials, and the logo was, and I swear to God, this is not a joke. It was a clip art factory with a little DNA helix coming out of one of the smokestacks.
It's like two pieces of clip art combined.
Really good, guys. Refactored Materials. So my first question to the team, and there were about 20 people working with the company at that time, and it was a very earnest question, but it was like, how attached are you guys to your brand? Because, if it's really important to you, I'll find a way to work around it. But my recommendation would be that we go in a different direction. And fortunately, the whole team was like, yes, please, let's move on. So my belief, Aaron, very, very much in line with what you just said, is that everything is branded. There's no behind the scenes. There's no behind the wall. You have to be real. You have to, consumers, humans have to be able to engage with you, to imagine you, to dimensionalize you. And so we were built to feel like a consumer brand. And we were unbelievably fortunate in that Tom Crabtree and the team at Manual in San Francisco were willing to take us on. They are a very selective firm. I've sent them a lot of clients, most of whom they've turned away. So I've only learned in hindsight how lucky we were. We had a fantastic partner in David Begler, who used to be, who was a creative at Apple for a very long time, and a great insights team. And we just spent a lot of time really trying to understand how to bring our science, our material science, to light in a way that consumers could relate to. I don't love the name Bolt Threads. I'll be perfectly honest. The founders picked it, and I let them have it. But everything else about our brand, literally down to the furnishings in the office, because my feeling was, hey, we're a B2B material supplier, but guess who's going to walk through our office, and guess who has? Stella McCartney, Diane von Furstenberg,
Right.
The principals of every old European fashion house, the families, folks that I'm not allowed to tell you came to visit us.
House of Gucci.
We can't tell you who's come to visit us. And they need to walk into our office and not be like, oh, cute lab. Like, they need to be able to like, yes, these are my people. In fact, I'll tell you a funny story. Stella came into the office the very first time, and we put her in her lab coat that said McCartney on the back, and she walked through the labs, and we introduced her to the scientists, and they were culturing some protein they were culturing in petri dishes, and we stopped by the table, and the scientist handed her the little petri dish, and she's like, "This is awesome! This is where you do the science." And she takes the lid off, and she's like, "This is cool." And the guy, like, he's, you can see his eyes, and like, kicked him in the shins, like, don't react.
Stay cool. Stay cool.
She walked out. I was like, so did we set you back a week, a month? But yeah, very much that back to the beautiful nerd who takes off the glasses. That is the vibe that we are trying to convey in everything that we do. And I think it's worked. But again, the work that Manual did in creating a visual identity for us, and then refreshing the visual identity a few years ago, was just, I don't know where it'd be without them.
Yeah. I think it's a good name. I like it. It's soft and hard at the same time. It's, you've got the Bolt and you've got Threads. I think it works as a base name. I know it probably, kind of leads you down the road of you're only in threaded materials, but I don't know. I think it works for me. Yeah.
Well,
anyway,
and just for everyone following at home, which I didn't say up front, and I should have, Bolt Threads is an advanced materials company. Our first product was spider silk without the spiders. We actually did make fibers out of spider silk. That technology turned out not to achieve that. I talked prior about consumers expect parity in price and performance, and our silk fiber really just wasn't. It wasn't a high performance fiber. So we have pivoted with the silk protein, the spider silk protein, which is still a miracle of nature that had never before been synthesized. And we're applying that into the beauty and personal care space. And then we developed a animal-free hide replacement for leather that's made from mycelium, which is the root structure of mushrooms. So certainly, the
so amazing.
Filamentous, they're very thread-like, but even without the literalness of the threads piece of the name, I think it's an interesting insight as a chief marketer. I did not have to win on the name, and there's so many ways to bring a brand to life.
Mhm.
And if that name was the one that really worked for the founders and it was on our short list of finalists, great. Let's have a name that you guys can relate to, and I will design around it, and it will still be beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
No.
a
And
rose
Sue,
by any other name.
right.
But yeah, I think it's great. Yeah.
And Sue, if your organization or yourself or founders are ever open to another naming exercise, I know a firm in Minneapolis would be happy to.
It's John Kelly.
Thank you very much. We built a little equity. Although Milo, which
You
is
have.
our mycelium leather, actually, there's a name that I absolutely love. David Baker came up with that name for us, and our intention was that when people talk about alternative leather, they say Milo. We want to be bring it on, Band-Aid, Kleenex,
Yeah, right.
Escalator. That's what we want.
Love that.
Nice. Yes.
That's great.
Well, just short of Escalade. You still want a trademark, but yes, that's good. That's very good.
We could have a conversation about Google, but
Right, we could. Yeah, that would be. We could. Susan, what do your perspective on the importance of design?
Yeah, so I would start first with our materials design, right? So we have an incredible global leader here that is able to take the largest companies in the world, so Conagra's Healthy Choice Power Bowl, or Kraft Mac and Cheese, or Annie's Mac and Cheese, or Sweet Greens Bowl, and figure out how do we meet their uniqueness of their design, but with plant-based fiber so that it can be earth digestible in the end. And so when we think about design, if we're dealing with a customer where they already have a very unique shape or design, it's how do we replicate that, but in a really healthy way, right, for earth and for the people. So sometimes we're designing our own products. So design in that regards, everything from something in an upscale nightclub or a restaurant, that's really important. Or if it's design that has to be very just utility and function, like if you're talking about healthcare and we want to replace, the plastic urinals or something, or bedpans, that has to just be really functional and low cost, etc. So design for us really comes down to what the customer's goals are and their KPIs, and then managing within that. So there's strength aspects, there's visual identity to it. There's a lot of things. Since Sue brought it up, it's interesting. We actually went through a branding exercise and redid our company's logo at a critical point in time. And so we were going to be announcing the Footprint Center, and that was really going to be the first time where people saw our brand identity. And we were always B2B and behind the wall kind of thing, but yet we want and we worked hard to be this thought leader, right, within ESG, environmental, society, and governance. And that's where the world's going. And so, like Sue was talking about, like Kleenex, or like Milo was her term. For Footprint, we want our logo to represent that is the sustainable. That is the one that's, healthy for the planet and healthy for me. And so it was important. We undertook a great exercise. I worked with L&R out of New York City. They did a great job with me. And, we created this, what you would call the word mark, right? So word mark means it's carefully designed. Probably most people on the call understand that, where it's not just a typeface that if you get into Word and you type it in. So, and it was built to really amplify who we were in terms of our technology and our advancement of innovation. So we didn't want it to be cutesy and really colorful with all these bright colors. It's meant to represent who we are and our innovation. And so that was a very interesting project. And we needed it. The leaf that we created needed to demonstrate the storytelling of growth over time, and also how it can digest, be nature digestible. So it was a very exciting project and fun. And, so design is very critical to everything that we're doing, every product that we're making, everything we're doing day to day.
Yeah. I love that term, that phrase, digestible by the earth. That is really cool. That's a good way to think about it. Without having to have Tums in the morning, or some other thing to deal with the upset stomach, right?
Well,
oil being the alcohol of our of our planet, right?
You think about climate change and what the issues are and what we're trying to overcome, right? So we can decrease carbon dioxide by 50% and lower energy, and then it's earth digestible. But trying to synthesize that down into just a logo or an icon, or how you're transforming venues is important, because people want the complexity out. They've been greenwashed, so you have to find a simple way through design to really make your brand come alive.
Yeah.
Love that. Yeah.
Yeah. And both of you use design to make your brands more consumable by human beings, right? To make it
Absolutely.
easier, not just, leaving that behind and not considering the fact that you should actually have a nicely designed brand. Yeah. It's cool.
Love it. Love it. All right. We're going to shift back to something Sue, you'd alluded to this early in the conversation, and Susan, you followed it up with this other side of the coin, I guess, I'll talk to Sue about as CEO of the Lucy brand, and you led that organization through this transition from .com to this multi-channel retailer, right? And then Susan, you mentioned, and now this is transition of physical to digital and how brands, organizations are making the shift. What I'd love to hear from both of you is this perspective on how brands, what they're doing to unite the digital and the physical, whether it's through experiences, through how you position the brand and the organization. And just talk a little bit about that. I mean, there's certainly been this evolution. We used to, in the past, physical led the way and technology was the support. And I think we're seeing a shift again with that. So, Sue, let's start with you. We'd love your thoughts. Perhaps, hearkening back to that transition with Lucy, and now what are you seeing with regard to how we're combining digital physical through brand?
It's in the Lucy example, it's a relatively simple answer, in that we started as a .com, but we were a group of retailers and product people, and so we were always yearning for the opportunity to go back to a physical environment, and it was very easy to bring that brand to life in a physical environment, because it was predicated on a very clear brand vision for helping women be active. So that one was a no-brainer, and that was before multi-channel retail was something that was a thing.
Right.
So it was pioneering work, and it was really hard. But in the case of Bolt, it's a much harder question to answer, because we in some ways are swimming against the current on this one, right? Because we're actually trying to make material things. In fact, one of the things we notice with most of our investors is we're one of the few companies in their platform that's actually trying to make three-dimensional objects, right?
Mm-hmm.
Digital transformation. I would make the statement that in 2021, digital transformation is easier and easier to comprehend than physical transformation. Much easier, right?
Oh,
We actually, we have to
that's
do more
interesting.
than move electrons, right? So, and the interesting thing is it takes you back to a much earlier period in time. So this is going to sound really nerdy, so I apologize, but it's also cool. If you go back to Japan, the samurai were the innovators, right? And they were the entrepreneurs. They were the Silicon Valley of their time, and they were using physical materials like leather, like silk, like metals, to create tools, often tools of war, that had never before been seen on the planet. And so there have been past periods where textiles were at the forefront of innovation. And then, you had sort of the golden age with DuPont and plastics and neoprene and spacesuits. And we see ourselves actually much more in line with that tradition than with kind of most of the digital entrepreneurs that hang out, that populate Silicon Valley alongside our company. So yeah, we're kind of both futuristic and old school in that way.
Love that. Yeah. Great combination, right?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Sue.
Great.
Susan, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, our products, because they were like essential during COVID, we're supporting food manufacturers, CPG companies. So there's always going to be a physical element to it. right? But the important thing is that the physical element then degrades, right? It is compostable, etc. So it's an interesting challenge of how you create something that can compete on price and performance and shipping and all these things that plastic can do, right, at a low price. Yet you've got this extra hurdle in terms of design and digital, the ability to have to decompose.
Right.
So I think that's how I would think about that. I mean,
Huh.
from a marketing standpoint, the other way I think about it is I need to unite consumers in this transformation digitally. And so one of the things that we did with our Footprint Foundation, because I'm the ED there, was to create this pledge2050.org where consumers can see and they can kind of raise their hand and click and to say, hey, I'm willing to give up plastic bags in the grocery or plastic straws or plastic utensils or even plastic takeout. And through that, we help them understand digitally, this is how your footprint looks so much better. This is the carbon you're saving or, the reduction in energy, et cetera, so that they understand what their choices can do. And so when I think about digital in terms of marketing, that's how I think about it. How do I create a massive movement that engages not only celebrities that you're going to hear more about in our integration with them. So Larry Fitzgerald, who will be a Hall of Famer in the NFL, and these others that we're going to start announcing, they really care about this issue and taking the pledge and thinking about how to unite their followers into this movement.
That's great. Great. So it's visually representing the impact consumers can make, and it's in real time.
Absolutely.
So I know right now what impact I'm making by this choice.
Absolutely. And it can go as far as not just websites digitally, it can go into digital music. It could go into NFTs. I mean, it's really, you've got to lean in to what is the future and how are people thinking about it. Kind of the Gretzky motto, which is I've got to, right? I got to put the puck or skate to where the puck's going to be.
Right.
And so we, on our hands, we have to envision where that whole playing field is going to be and where people are going to be at. And then how do you bring them along with you to be there where the puck's going to be?
Yeah. Love it. Great. Thank you. Thank you both.
That's really good. So we are at the end of 2021, and I'm always curious when we get to the end of a year what people are looking forward to in the new year, but also what they'd like to stop hearing or stop talking about or have, because there's certain things that fade out of the conversation. Like you really can't say that anymore. Really, it's just inappropriate, or you're culturally behind if you're bringing up that news or whatever. What are the things that you're hoping will just disappear out of the conversation? And then what are you looking forward to in this year 2022? Sue, do you want to give us a perspective on that?
You want the goodbyes first?
Yes, the goodbyes. The goodbyes.
And it's not the individual, but the conversation about. I would like to hear less about Elon Musk. I would like to hear less about him. And I would never want to hear the word COVID again. How's that for 3
yes.
Elon Musk, Bitcoin, and COVID.
All right.
And in terms of, and by the way, I want to be really clear. I'm very supportive. In fact, I am a fangirl of Tesla and what Elon has done in terms of bringing the electric car, the inevitability of the electric car. He moved that forward probably 10 years to the tremendous betterment of the planet. But the constant buzz around him and his children's name is a little much.
Well, yeah. Then he tweets about going to the bathroom, which is really unpleasant to him.
Yeah, exactly. Case in point. It just made my point for me. So there we go.
Right.
And then in terms of what I'm looking forward to, I am very excited about the fact that humanity increasingly is waking up to the climate, the earth impacts and the ethical impact of animal industrial agriculture. And I expect that conversation to just become more and more robust, and we are excited to be at the center of it. I'm personally excited to be involved in that conversation. And we believe we're going to look back at this, many of the practices in animal industrial agriculture as a stain on humanity. And we all know that cars and cows are the things that we can change fastest to have the biggest net positive income on the planet, positive impact on the planet. And I'm really excited to see that movement gaining steam in 22.
Cars and cows.
Cars and cows. I know that's sticking
Cars
with
and
me.
cows.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's great. Susan, what are you saying goodbye to?
Greenwashing. I think there's enough people now that understand all these lies we've been told. And I think it's just horrendous that there were companies doing this and knowing what they're providing isn't efficacious and doesn't help the planet Earth, etc. What I'm saying hello to and welcoming and embracing is all the transparency and metrics. Like, let's lean into ESG. Let's lean into the transparency of all this data sharing of watching. If you look at COP26, there's all kinds of new software coming out where you can track the carbon offsets, et cetera. So no longer will it be, oh, I kind of do a report, or, oh, we don't do a report. It's like, no, we're now in an age of transparency. Consumers want to know. And the data's out there, and there are alternatives like, Footprint's plant-based materials. So
yeah.
Here. Love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Weird fingers. Yes. This was wonderful. There's so many more topics I'd love to cover with both of you today, but it's been a wonderful conversation. Thank you for helping us close out a year of Think and Link. A lot of volatility this year, but a lot of optimism. So we appreciate your inspiring remarks and perspectives today. Really appreciate
that.
And
I look forward to seeing more of the two of you on stages, more of the two of your brands out there more often. Sue, a little bit for you. It's going to be great, and a wonderful 2022 to everyone. And hopefully we'll see you in the new year. Thank you all. I'll hand it over to Adam. All right.
Take care. Thanks, Susan.
Bye-bye.